On February 1st, 1780, General Henry Clinton landed his army of redcoats 30 miles from Charleston, South Carolina. By May 12th, the city had fallen, allowing the British to quickly conquer cities throughout the colony. Perhaps the most important was the town of Camden, South Carolina. On July 19, 1780, Horatio Gates took command of the Continental's Southern Army in Hillsborough, North Carolina. His first priority was to march south and liberate Camden. The march was long and hard. By August 7th, many of his men were starving for lack of supplies, but he soon met up with General Richard Caswell, commanding 2,100 North Carolina militiamen, and General Edward Stevens with 700 militiamen from Virginia. When Gates arrived in Camden, he had well over 4,000 men under his command, compared to 2,200 under the command of Charles Cornwallis. Although Gates had almost twice as many soldiers as Cornwallis, many of his most experienced troops were suffering from dysentery and unfit for battle. The bulk of his army was made up of the North Carolina and Virginia militiamen who had never even seen combat. On the morning of August 16, 1780, the two commanders mustered their troops for battle. General Gates deployed his troops in the traditional manner, with his most experienced soldiers, the veterans from Maryland and Delaware, given a place of honor along his right flank, while the untested militiamen lined up on his left flank. This deployment had the Continental militiamen facing off against the battle-hardened veterans of Cornwallis' 23rd and 33rd Regiments. Minutes into the battle, the sight of a British bayonet charge sent the militiamen running for their lives. And with that, more than half of Gates' grand army was in full retreat. From his position well behind the lines, Gates watched as half his army fled the field, and assuming the battle was already lost, he turned and joined the retreat. While the left flank of the Continentals fell apart, Major General Johann de Kalb, the Prussian-born French soldier, continued to fight, and led the Maryland and Delaware regulars in a valiant final stand. But they were soon surrounded, as the British 23rd and 33rd Regiments turned from the fleeing militia to engage the only Continentals still fighting. As he tried to rally his troops for one final push, de Kalb was shot from his horse, and with that, all resistance to the Redcoat onslaught fell away. In just over an hour, Cornwallis handed the Americans one of their worst defeats of the war. With the army in the South in tatters, and no commanding officer to speak of, it looked like the British would make easy work of the rest of the colonies. It would take a miracle to turn the tide.